14 years ago, which you already heard from the introduction, I was a single parent, no money, no time. I was going to Colorado to visit my son, and I happened to open a Sports Illustrated magazine, and it opened it to trekking in Nepal. And for some reason, I decided to go, and the reason is I had a spiritual teacher who had encouraged her students that if they ever felt drawn anywhere, that they ought to go because something would unfold for them. And I'm wondering if any of you here have ever felt like you wanted to go somewhere, but you really didn't know why, and it didn't really make sense. Anybody feel that way? Yeah, most people have. And usually either they keep it to themselves and they never tell a soul, or they talk to a lot of people about it all the time. My dad died of Lou Gehrig's disease when I was 26. And one of the things he said to me was that he couldn't believe he wouldn't live long enough to enjoy his retirement. And he was an obstetrician gynecologist, and he had gone to Columbia to work with women and children. And he had always wanted to go back. So at a very young age, I decided that anything I wanted to do, I was going to do everything in my power to make it happen. I didn't want to be one of those people looking back on my life and saying, oh, I wish I'd done that, I wish I'd done such and such, because, as she said in the introduction, now's the time. And if we don't stop and really make a decision to do the things we want, life just keeps happening to us. So today I'm going to talk to you about three things. I'm going to talk to you about voluntourism, I'm going to talk to you about Nepal, and then I'll explain some of the details of my trip. So voluntourism is the fastest growing segment of the travel industry. More and more people are wondering and yearning really to understand people from other countries and how they live and think. So voluntourism gives you an opportunity to get to know other cultures and people on a deeper level. And on our trip, is only about 12 hours that we spend in service out of 10 days. So some of the benefits of voluntourism are that you get to know another culture on a very deep level. And you get to have human-to-human contact, which you really don't get when you arrive at the airport and you get in a limousine and you go to your fancy hotel, right? So you really get to understand the history and the culture on a much, much deeper level. And some people overcome sort of misconceptions and misunderstandings they've had about other people that they didn't even really know they had. But when they're put in another situation, they learn much more about other people. Often people make friends, which is unexpected benefit. Many people experience new things in themselves that maybe they didn't know before. They discover some strength they had that they didn't realize. And other people remember things that they'd forgotten about, maybe from earlier in their lives, something they loved to do and they didn't remember. Some people who are open and willing are able to tap into something more universal that connects each of us as human beings. And that's one of the best feelings in the world. And often, people who are open and willing experience a transformational energy that can happen from getting out of yourself and giving back to other people. So there are many places you can do voluntourism. You can do it in the United States. There are many, many programs. So I chose Nepal. And so Nepal is famous for the mountains. These are in the Himalayan mountains, and they were formed by two tectonic plates crashing into each other. So these are the youngest and tallest mountains on our planet. And they're still growing. So there's this very mystical, kind of magical energy with them. So just to give you a point of reference, they have 54 mountains over 18,000 feet. They have 32 over 20,000 feet. And of course, they have Mount Everest, which is at 29,000 feet, the highest mountain in the world. And so in the United States, we have one mountain over 18,000, and that's Mount McKinley, which they call Denali now. And that's 20,320. And then here in Maryland, our highest mountain is Backbone at 3,075. So these are huge mountains. They have three major religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam. But they have many other religions because there are so many tribes, And so there are many variations on that theme. But somehow they're known for peace and harmony, and I believe it comes from the mountains. So Nepal is very exotic, spectacularly beautiful and mystical, and it's very remote. And all that being said, it's one of the poorest countries in the world. In 2004, a month after 9/11, I went to Nepal, and as you might remember, we were all pretty shut down here. Nobody was traveling. And I met Steve Webster, who is my business partner in Nepal right now, and he has worked for many of the big travel companies, but he's lived in Nepal for 30 years. So this is Steve talking to the Rinpoche that we were invited to meet. And a Rinpoche is considered a very high revered teacher in the Buddhist culture. Rinpoche means precious one. This was a rare opportunity, and I didn't realize how rare, but we had an opportunity to meet with him. And since it was a month after 9/11, he talked about world peace. And we had an opportunity to ask a question afterwards, and I asked, what can we do to bring peace to the world? And he suggested that each of us could take back a little bit of Nepal to the United States. And to tell you the truth, after the trip, it was fabulous. I came back to my life, mayhem and bedlam, completely forgot about this. But when I was there last year, Steve was talking to me and he said, remember that, Sydney? And I'm like, oh yeah, I do. And I think this is when the seed was planted for my idea to take groups to Nepal. So I will tell you a little bit about the trip now. It's a 10-day trip in country. The questions that come up the most are, how much does it cost? So it's under $5,000 for everything in country. Tips, transportation, food, everything's covered. And most of the other travel companies, same guides, same hotels, charge $2,000 or $3,000 more. This is my passion project, so the cost is lower. So our first 2 nights were spent in the Hyatt, because it is a long trip, it's remote, and it feels just sort of comfortable to get into familiar surroundings. Everybody wonders about the bathrooms, the showers. Everything's fine. We have bathroom showers all the way, and we have really good food the whole way. So everybody asks me that, and everybody asks about if they can do the walk and the hiking part, and that if you can walk an hour and 15 minutes, you can do it. It was very moderate hiking. So the first day we do sightseeing. We see a lot of the World Heritage sites. And then we go to Shiva Puri Lodge, which is owned by Steve, and is in the urban forest above Kathmandu. And so that's when things start to slow down, and you begin to feel that deep sense of peace. And in this trip, there's plenty of time for relaxation. So if someone doesn't want to do something, they can just stay back and rest. Very flexible. It's designed to serve the group. So we had yoga in the morning before breakfast, and since there was a time change, we were awake, and it was lovely. Then we had a leisurely breakfast, and then we would go do our service. And these are some children in Nepal, and this is an opportunity to really get out of ourselves and give back. This is a picture of Nehru, is Steve's wife, and she was my translator, and so we're interviewing a young mother. And when I go back this year, I'm so excited. Since we are going back this year, I'm going to be doing a moms group, because most of the moms are under 30 and have young children, and they've had education in hygiene and other things. But I think they're interested now in sort of a little bit knowing more about their children, because they want their children to get educated. And then, of course, I'll be able to answer any of their concerns. And I'm hoping Nehru will be my translator, because one of the things that was very rewarding about working with her, she told me that she'd always been wondering how she could help her own people. And when we first started, I was doing the interviewing, she was translating. But after 2 interviews, she was doing the interviewing. And it was just so rewarding for me to see that. And I'm hoping that if she can translate in the moms groups, she might be able to go back and continue to work with them. After 3 days at Steve's, we go to Pokhara, which is like a half-hour flight that is the taking off point to go on treks, especially in the Annapurna Range. And the planes are real small, and it's a really small airport. So we get there, and that's when we begin the trek. And it's very moderate, and it's along a ridge line, so you're not actually in the mountains. It gets as high as Denver. So if anybody's been to Denver, that's the altitude. That's another thing everybody worries about is the altitude. And look at me, I'm not a mountain climber or anything. I can, most people can do it. The terrain is beautiful. It's very lush and untouched, really. And we didn't see many trek hikers out there. But we have a staff with us, I should mention that. We have Sherpas and guides who take us from hut to hut, and there are bathrooms and showers and everything in the huts. So everybody was very comfortable. And then our last night, after 3 days in the hiking, and that's when most people really feel that deep sense of peace and recharge your batteries. And when people go to Nepal, often they talk about experiencing right brain thinking, and right brain thinking is where all our creativity, our spontaneity, our joy, our yearning to find purpose comes from. So this is like an amazing time to experience all of that. And like many people, when you go on trips, you get ideas of what you're going to do when you come back, and the same thing happens here, but I think more so. So the last night last year, we spent a night in the Dwarka Hotel, which is another historic site, and it's an example of, it's owned by a Nepalese man, and it's an example of how you can keep the culture of Nepal and still be modern. It's really quite beautiful. So this trip isn't for everybody. It's definitely remote. But if you're interested in remembering what's important and what's true, if you're interested in experiencing peace, if you're interested in having a good time and really getting away from everything, and if you're in a transition or contemplating a transition or need time just to reflect and think about your life and where you want to go, I hope you'll join me. I have cards, and if you'd like to talk with me further about the trip, I go every October, and it is the trek of your life. So thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.